So I had some requests to kind of take a look at this car, 1984 and a half GT-350 Mustang. Not many videos out there on the funky engine that these things came with. There was only about 600, maybe 550 convertible automatic GT-350s made. There's the stick, or the auto. This one's got 101,000 miles on it, but it's only got about 18,000 miles on the engine. I had it rebuilt. That's the 20th anniversary thing. New roof. That's pretty much the only thing I've really changed. It's got 16-inch TRX copied LMR wheels to make it look stock, but these allow you to put better tires on it than the original metrics. I've got full duals put on it, custom. You can see the little tiny mufflers down there. It's not too loud. Catted H-pipe as well. There you can see the cats. There's the very small mufflers. And those lead into a set of equal length shorty headers, hookers, super competition. It's got GT-40 3-bar heads on it, and a Edelbrock 4-barrel intake manifold. I think it's a Performer, which I have put the EGR plate adapter on to bring it down to the 2 barrels that's needed for the CFI that you find on these first ever fuel injected Mustangs. You can see there's the CFI, the central fuel injection, TBI. That's what a lot of people call it. Fuel pressure regulator right on top there. And a nice K&N oil-based filter there, air filter, which really does make a difference on this engine. Everything works, air conditioning, all of it works. I really haven't done anything to it except for those changes. This strut support bar, which is critical. This car feels dangerous to drive without it. And then these camber plates to help beef up those. But this car is from Maryland originally. I'm really the second owner of it. There's no rust on it anywhere. It's very, very healthy. I keep it garaged all winter long. Engine was rebuilt by Stapleton Motors, racing engines. And I just had them do it as a slightly increased compression, maybe 8.8, and those weird hyperteretic pistons. But everything else is just stock. It's a little bored over, right, with a new crank in it. But just it's comp cams, but the cam is a kind of a truck grind 351 cam, because this has speed density CFI. You can't really put a fancy cam in it, otherwise it just doesn't run. It can't compensate. That said, these things are supposed to be notoriously difficult to tune up after you've put all these fancy things like new heads, exhaust, duals, and so on. But I didn't have any problems with it. It runs great. On the dyno, we're looking at about 220 at the flywheel, 180 at the rear tires. These engines originally had 159 at the flywheel for horsepower, just terrible. About 310 pounds per foot of torque. So it's got the horsepower of a later model fuel injection, like an 86 fuel injected motor. It gets about 20 miles per gallon on the highway. I just took it 200 miles this morning and got 20 miles per gallon. In town it's terrible, 12 miles per gallon if I'm lucky. Runs perfectly cool, have no overheating issues. I do have an MSD distributor. The old distributor was fine, it just started getting old and the bearings were going and everything, so I decided to just upgrade to that. It was hard to find one that fit this motor because it doesn't have a roller block. This is old flat tappet. But I eventually did find one. What else is going on in here? Ford Performance springs to lower it about 1/2 inch. Just regular old shocks and struts. new, but just, you know, regular. They're not race struts or anything. I do race it. I do autocross with it. It's got all the GT suspension from the factory, so it's got massive sway bars. You can see one right down there in the front. It's real tight. It's very competitive, even though it's pretty much stock and it's got an automatic. The only other thing I've done right was the transmission. I blew it up racing, and so I had a shop in town here. You can see I put some gauges in, but they're velcroed in with 3D printed holder, so I've done no damage to the car to get those in there. It's air-fuel ratio, oil temperature, and oil pressure. Anyway, the transmission, I told the guy that rebuilt it to make it indestructible, and so this thing is just a beast. It'll bark the rear tires in second gear every time, and if you floor it, it'll really go crazy. So it's a real tight tranny that will not break again. I think that's everything in it. So we're just helping those people out that have a CFI or are interested in the kind of history of this. They only made this for 2 years for the Ford, the HO, and the difference with the HO CFI compared to like a 351 is the diameter of the venturis on the CFI throttle body are way larger on the HOs. So you can't just find an old stock CFI off a 351 or something like that, or a non-HO engine and pop it on here. Those are terrible. If I ever want to get rid of it, because there's a lot of sensors, all kinds of things in here that you can't get anymore. When it goes, I'll just pull the CFI off, take off that 2-barrel EGR plate and put a 4-barrel EGR plate, because it's already got the 4-barrel manifold, and put a Holly Sniper or something like that on it instead. And I'll probably pick up a bunch of horsepower when I do it. These things mechanically can only get to about 250. That's the most fuel and air that they can get into the engine. It's 250 horsepower. That's about it. I mean, it runs really good. Nice and cool. Engine oil sits around 185. Cruising jumps up to 210 or so when you're climbing up hills and stuff, giving it the juice. But otherwise, very reliable car. I haven't had to do any work on it for a couple of years now after I got it. When I got it, it didn't run at all. But there you go. Ford Mustang CFI GT-350.